Hello and welcome to the very last lesson of your Philosophy 12 online class. I've really enjoyed being your teacher this semester, and I hope that you've learned something. I hope you've grown, and these are just a few thoughts that I want to leave you with, and some of them may be on the exam. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Two famous quotes. Wisest is he who knows that he knows nothing, and the unexamined life is not worth living. These are two famous quotes from the very same philosopher, Socrates. And that's his picture there. And both of these are related in a way, but also very different. Think about how these two quotes are related for a second. Okay, so this all boils down to what the value of philosophy is. And this takes us right back to our very first lesson. One value of philosophy is to teach us how to think about questions that seem to have no answer. And you may have found yourself intrigued or sometimes frustrated by some of the philosophical questions we have addressed this semester. But hopefully you've found a way to engage with those questions, and even if you aren't able to settle on an answer, you've found the experience worthwhile. However, this doesn't mean that there's no truth, and that was another thing that I hoped to emphasize this semester. Hopefully, philosophy will allow us to reveal some truth about ourselves, the universe, and our relationship with the universe. Finally, philosophy should aim to encourage us to keep an open and inquisitive mind. And those two features are very important, open and inquisitive. What does it mean to have an open and inquisitive mind? Think about that for a second. Now I'd like to present to you the same idea, but in slightly different terms. Philosophical thinking can be contrasted with ideological thinking. And let me explain what I mean by that. Philosophy, as you know, is the rational inquiry into the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence. Philosophical thinking is a way of thinking about these topics that is both open to multiple critical perspectives and rooted in rational inquiry. So this should be familiar to you, not too much of a surprise. As you know, there were always multiple critical perspectives on a variety of different issues that we covered and topics that we covered this semester. But the one thing that unified all of them is reason, rational inquiry. If you're going to make an argument, it's got to be logical, right? That's the one thing that sort of unifies all philosophical thinking. Okay, so what then is ideological thinking? Ideological thinking comes from the word ideology, which is a system or a paradigm, to use the philosophy of science language, of fundamental beliefs, norms, and values that are held by an individual or a group. So think for a moment of ideologies that you may have encountered. So I'll give you one example. Communism is an ideology. We call it a political utopia in the political philosophy unit, but it's also an ideology because it's a way of thinking about the world. In communism, everything is rooted in class inequality, and everything can be explained by class inequality, and all goals should be directed towards overcoming that class inequality. So ideological thinking, then, is a way of thinking about the world which is based on one's ideology, based on one's system of fundamental beliefs. All inquiry is only valuable insofar or to the extent that it defends and advances the ideology. Alternative, incompatible perspectives are rejected. Rationalization and confirmation bias, which is that philosophy of science idea that we're always going to favor our own theory and try to confirm our own theory rather than switching to another theory. So rationalization and confirmation bias ensure that new knowledge is consistent with the ideology. Skepticism is different from both philosophical thinking and ideological thinking. Skepticism is just purely critical inquiry which questions the possibility of knowledge in different forms. Okay, so one question for you, is philosophy the same as skepticism? Now, I already hinted that it's not, so if it's not, what is the difference? Well, some philosophers can be considered skeptics. David Hume, for instance, is the ultimate skeptic. He questions the possibility of pretty much any knowledge at all. But there are others who tried to respond to Hume by developing their own philosophies. Immanuel Kant, much of his philosophy is a response to Hume's skepticism. So skepticism is a part of philosophy, but it's not the whole thing. Now I want you to consider these questions for a moment. What is the danger of ideological thinking? What is the danger of basing your entire way of thinking on a fundamental set of beliefs? And arguably, a lot of people think in this way. A lot of people approach the world in this way. But it carries with it some real dangers. Well, let me suggest some of the dangers that ideological thinking carries with it. For one, it limits the possibilities in your thinking. It limits what you can consider to be real, to be included in your set of beliefs, included in your knowledge. And potentially it can also lead to discrimination, and depending on what the ideology is, it can lead to some real ethical problems as well. So that's the danger, or some of the dangers with ideological thinking. Are there any dangers associated with skepticism and philosophical thinking? I want you to consider that for a sec. Well, one of the dangers with skepticism is that it leaves us feeling like there's no bedrock of beliefs that we can depend upon. And that's kind of unnerving. That's kind of scary. But I want to suggest that we don't have to leave ourselves in that skeptical place. Even though David Hume suggested that we can't depend on any knowledge, I think there's good reason to trust scientific knowledge. There's good reason to trust our senses. There's good reason to trust our minds, and to feel like there is more to philosophy than just that extreme skepticism. Alexander Pope said that a little learning is a dangerous thing. Now think about that for a second. We have barely scratched the surface when it comes to philosophy. There's so much more to know, so much more to learn. And so I certainly don't want you to leave this course thinking, I got it down. I know everything there is to know about philosophy. On the other hand, I don't want you to leave this course thinking, there's nothing that anyone could ever know. I don't want to leave you in that extreme skepticism, or certainly don't want to leave you as a solipsist. Rather, again, I'll take you back to that idea of philosophical thinking. You should leave this course with an open and inquisitive mind, ready to gain new knowledge, gain new learning, but also to be critical and reflective of all of the new information that you encounter over your lifetime. Hopefully you have learned something throughout this course, and now I want you to reflect upon what exactly that is. Okay, so take a look at this slide and take a look at the beliefs and values listed there. So beliefs and values about reality, knowledge, ethics, society, aesthetics, politics, science, religion. Below that, there are beliefs of a more specific nature. And I want you to think about what you believed about these sorts of things before you took the course, and what values you had before you took the course, and have any of those changed since since we started in February. Now, some of them may not have changed, and I think that's great. That's fine. Some of them may have changed a little bit, and some of them you may have completely abandoned. So I'd like you to think about a number of beliefs that you had before the course started on all of these different topics, and write them down if that works for you. And then think about which of those beliefs would you defend, which would you modify slightly, and which would you abandon completely. All right, well, that's it for me. And we're just about finished the course. As I said in the news feed, stay the course. Make sure that you have everything completed. Make sure that you're prepared for the exam on Wednesday. And I wish you all the best. Have a fantastic summer if I don't see you. Okay.